November is just around the corner, and that means the 16th Annual National Podcast Post Month is fast approaching. Hi, I'm Jennifer Navarrete, founder of NaPodPomo, and I'm inviting you to join the 30-day Global Podcasting Challenge. Whether you're a newbie looking to start your first podcast or a seasoned pro seeking inspiration, NaPodPomo is the perfect place to experiment and try new things. Visit napodpomo.org to learn more. See where podcasting can take you this November during National Podcast Post Month.
Chapter 1. Grab a seat. Family is not an important thing. It's everything. Michael J. Fox. The weight loss that I initially attributed to my new workout routine hadn't ended. In less than 3 months, I had lost 30 pounds. Trust me, I wasn't working out that hard. 1 hour, 3 times a week. I was alarmed, so I started the investigational process to determine what in the world was going on. Then came the dizzy spells, neck stiffness, and pain in both my shoulders. The pain came on so quickly. I felt relentlessly pushed to understand what was triggering these physical problems. But I was more troubled by my wife Erin's constant insinuations, blaming our deteriorating relationship on me. They were blurring my reality, making rational thought more and more challenging. I was starved for clarity every waking moment. Hell, Erin had done an excellent job convincing me that something was wrong. Should I get checked? Erin demanded I schedule an appointment to see a psychiatrist who practiced in the same large group as her psychiatrist. As fate would have it, the first available appointment was 3 months out. Even though I grabbed the date, the office practically told me I would be better off looking elsewhere. In reality, I was not chomping at the bit to get in there. I only hoped that I was showing Erin a willingness to do my part to fix our relationship. She continued questioning everything I did and even called the damn office to check and see if I indeed had made an appointment. Wouldn't you know it? They told her I had not. I'm still not sure if this was just their way of trying to keep things confidential, but so much for the healthcare privacy laws, right? Knowing damn well that I made an appointment, I was livid. No surprise, so was Erin. I'd become sadly familiar with this version of Erin. She verbally stuck fork after fork in me. You are a liar, you can never be trusted, and you did not make an appointment. All I could do was sit there dumbfounded, knowing I'd done what she asked, trying to help our relationship. I called the office and not so nicely let them know the mess they were causing me in my already troubled marriage. They did indeed have an appointment for me, but spelled my last name with the wrong first letter. Now, this sort of thing had happened to me before, but it never caused problems like this. To appease Erin, though, I canceled that appointment and obtained a referral from our family practitioner for another psychiatrist. September 9th, 2 days before our 21st wedding anniversary, would be my initial meeting. Believe me, I had never imagined myself doing this ever. But by the grace of God, I was ready and felt it could be an excellent thing if I embraced it.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have another author joining me today, and we have some things in common around where we are from and places we know, and that's always exciting. JD is on with me today. We're going to be talking about his book and his author journey, his story. It's incredible. This gentleman has been on probably more podcasts as a guest than I've ever been on. And it's exciting to have him on the show. JD, welcome to Living the Next Chapter.
I am happy to be here. So thank you very much for the opportunity, Dave. Yeah.
It's amazing. You have done the whole gamut of podcast episodes as a guest. It's amazing. Tell me, how's your feeling as an author going on podcasts? Is it serving you as a way to promote your book? Tell me about the experience about being a guest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been fortunate and blessed, and I'm grateful for every opportunity that I have received. But yeah, I think I've done 35 or 40 podcasts, and the story has also been picked up by Daily Mail TV, Australian television did a little snippet on it, especially with the Johnny Depp verdict. When the Johnny Depp verdict came out, they wanted my position on that. But it has absolutely helped to promote the book and to share my story. The messages I received from folks are like, yeah, we heard you on this podcast or that podcast. It's been tremendous. Yeah. More than I could have ever hoped for, to be honest with you.
Amazing. So, okay, where are you in this big world at the moment?
Relative to what?
Yeah, just like where you are in the world, like where you're living.
Oh, physically. Yeah.
Physically,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. So all I've lived in North Carolina for 19 years, moved down to the Charleston, South Carolina area a
Okay.
little over 3 years ago. But originally, as we talked, born and raised in the Pennsylvania area. And, but I've been gone a long time. I've been gone 26 years, spent 5 years in Kentucky as well. But never, ever did I think I'd write a book.
Mm.
It wasn't on my to-do list to be an author and to write a book. Yeah.
No, that's interesting. Okay, your story, I've caught snippets with all your interviews, and I have I'm struggling to know where to start with your story, because this is something I know you've mentioned this story many, many, many times,
Yep.
but I'd love to kind of give everyone an overview, kind of how you got to writing your book and the story behind it, because again, I shake my head as I hear you speak about this. I would love to start wherever you want to start, because the
Yeah.
story is amazing. So
Well, thank you very much. I guess I would start, with sharing the rationale for writing it, right?
okay.
So, many reasons for why I wrote it and put in the energy to it, and I applaud folks that have written and published books. It's not easy, as you know all too well. But when I was going through my nightmarish journey, I will try to be brief on the journey. It's all covered in the book. 17 years in a marriage, reasonably stable, happy, very little to no discord, raising two young kids, building a career, so forth, so on. And about the 8th, and as luck would have it, yesterday would have been our 30th wedding anniversary on September 11th, 2000,
Wow.
2000 in 1993, excuse me.
Yeah.
September 11th, 1993 is when we got married. So 17 years, reasonably stable. And then the wheels came off. And at the time when the wheels started coming off, I had no explanation for why, what is going on. I mean, it's a very complicated and complex story. At the top of the list would be the fact that my now ex-wife believed, and I believed, I had no reason not to believe her, that she had an autoimmune disease. So some of the things that I started to see with her mentality, with her physical symptoms, all the ailments that she had, I was always chalking it up to her autoimmune disease. I would later discover, so it began subtly on her part with accusations of infidelity and drug addiction. She would accuse me of, doing drugs, accuse me of infidelity, when in fact I would later discover classic example of gaslighting and projection, which I knew nothing about gaslighting at the time.
Yeah.
That everything she was accusing me of doing, she was actually doing. So I endured, and it only gets a small part in the book, but I survived arsenic poisoning. I would later discover that after we separated, that she had been, after a long medical journey where they couldn't find anything, they discovered that, I had been chronically exposed to arsenic. She didn't do any jail time because it took about a year to figure that out. She destroyed evidence. She destroyed computers, restored her phone to factory settings in spite of a court order. So the arsenic was a small part of it, but also along the journey, I spent 9 days in two different psychiatric facilities. I was involuntarily committed. That journey, the anniversary of that is coming up this Friday, my 9th anniversary of being involuntarily committed. I would later discover, Dave, that she had set me up for that. She broke me down, broke me down emotionally, and then her mother would get involved later down the road, but she broke me down emotionally, hollowed me out. And the threat of losing my family and separation and divorce, my family was my strength. And as they say, the devil oftentimes attacks your strength and turns it into a weakness. And that's exactly what she did. The mistake I made, I come from a very large family, but the mistake I made is I told nobody. I wasn't trying to figure it out, but I was trying to figure out what in the heck was going on with her. And it would take a few years before I would get the actual answers. But the title of the book is The Third Gift, My Dance with the Devil and Her Mother. First two gifts are my kids. And the third gift would be a revelation that she made when we went to mediation. So we had separated. We went to mediation, try to stay out of the courts, settle up, with the assets and alimony and so forth, so on. And it was at our first mediation that she accused me of giving her sexually transmitted herpes, which at that point in time, I knew I wasn't doing drugs. I knew I hadn't cheated on her. It was like a smack across the face from God to say, son, your marriage is over. It was that accusation, that revelation that she made through an attorney going back and forth between the rooms, that led me to look into her medical claims, look into her pharmacy claims that I had full legal access to because I was the primary card holder for our insurance. And I spent hours and hours and hours digging through those claims. And fortunately, I'm in my full-time job as I work in the pharmaceutical industry. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry 30 plus years. So I had the knowledge of what I was looking at.
Right.
And I discovered a hidden prescription drug addiction. I discovered she had pretty much contracted every STD out there. I not only confirmed that, yeah, she did have sexually transmitted herpes. She was taking medication for it, but she thought she had infected me. So the book is very real, very raw. I wrote it under a pseudonym. I changed a few locations, but other than that, it's as transparent as I could be. So our journey through the court system, my journey through a domestic violence trial, because she accused me once I was out of the house, she filed domestic violence charges against me. So I had to defend myself against that. She dragged my daughter into the courts to potentially testify against me. Fortunately, my daughter was a minor and she never took the stand to testify against me. So I endured psychiatric lockup, poisoning, gaslighting, projection, child alienation. I was, alienated from my daughter for 2 years. It's one of my favorite chapters in the book called Hi Daddy. When she came back into my life, she was old enough, and I thank God for a lot of things, but she was old enough to recognize on her own that there's something wrong with mom. And I need to reach out to dad. And her friends, one of her best friends encouraged her. So the full journey is in the book. The letters that she wrote to my psychiatrist at the time and to my family practitioner, setting me up, building the case that I had bipolar 2 and I had anger issues and mood issues, and none of it was true. I didn't discover that until I was collecting my medical records. So for the alimony trial, and the only reason I went that far, is in the state of North Carolina, if there's proof of infidelity, the guilty person should be barred from receiving alimony. And so we had positive DNA tests that she indeed had sexually transmitted herpes. She destroyed her phone. So that's why I continued to fight it in the courts. But part of that process was we subpoenaed her medical records. I collected all my medical records, and I did not discover these letters that she wrote behind my back until I got my medical records. And I'm like, well, what are these? The physicians never even mentioned that they received these letters. You would have thought that they owed it to me to say, hey, your wife sent us a letter. We're going to share it with you. They didn't. And so the actual letters, unedited, are in the book. And, our journey through the court system with the domestic violence trial and the 4-day alimony trial, that's in the book. I took advantage of the concept of public record and got the audio files. They wanted $10,000 for written transcripts. And of course, I'm doing this book on a shoestring budget. I'm a lone soldier. So I said, send me the audio files. So as I was writing it, probably my most difficult part of the book to write is the 4 chapters on our alimony trial. I'm listening on my iPad and I'm typing on my little computer, transcribing it myself, trying to pull in only what I thought was relevant to the story. There's a lot of legalese and a lot of chatter between the attorneys and the judge that wasn't necessary. But that was the most difficult part of the book for me to write emotionally, because I had to listen to my now ex-mother-in-law and a couple of girlfriends that she resurrected from 8th grade that I hadn't seen in years to come take the stand and testify that I was controlling, I was abusive. I never allowed her to have friends or to socialize, which none of it was true. So it was just about character assassination. And so I endured, that was the hardest part of the book to write, was the listening to all that again and reliving the emotions of having your character assassinated. And so I was just going to, so the rationale, there are many reasons why I wrote the book. And I think what the 2 at the top of the list are, when I was going through this journey, I was exiled from the home. I lived out of my car, lived out of a hotel. I lived with some of my brothers and their families up in PA. Spent a lot of time in PA because that's where my support system was. But in my travels and in my journeys, meeting other folks, when they would share their stories with me, just in casual conversations, I spent 3.5 months in and out of a hotel, and you get to know people, right? Just sitting outside or doing whatever. I couldn't stay in the room all day long.
Yeah.
And I was traveling for work too, which was a blessing. But when they were sharing their stories with me, I call it relativity. It was what kept me grounded to go, okay, on days that you want to feel self-pity, all right, nobody died. You have your health, you have a job, you have your 2 kids, your one kid's not talking to you right now, but by the grace of God, she will come back around, which she did. So it kept me grounded to say, you don't have it so bad. And so that's why I felt writing my story may be an inspiration to others. And then I think the other reason was my therapist at the time, a female therapist. And I say female because she's the one that said, you need to write a book. And when you write your book, here's the name I want you to use for me. And it was such a crazy story it was a 4 or 5 year journey. I mean, it was the wheels began to come off in 2014. We didn't finish up legally till 2018. I started writing the book in 2017 before the whole mess was done. But yeah, she said to me, there are very few, if any, books about men on the other side of the equation out there.
Right.
So you need to write a book. And family and friends across this 4 or 5 year journey, there were so many crazy discoveries, which are all outlined in the book. They said, hey, when you write your book, here's the name I want you to use for me. So I heard that a lot. When you write your book, I want you to, use this particular name for me.
Yeah.
And on my side, everybody picked their names. Now for her side, I had a little fun with it. So with some of her friends and all that, I figured, let's go with the classic stripper name or something. So I was looking up. So I was trying to have a little sense of humor also when I wrote the book.
Yeah.
And, for anybody that's written a book, anybody that's gone through a traumatic experience, I will say that I was still in the middle of it when I started writing it. So there was some anger.
Yeah.
And once we got to completion, it completely took on a different tone. It took me about a year to write. And it took on a different tone as I closed the chapter on the legal stuff, and I was able to begin the healing process, which took 2-3 years to really find peace after everything was done. It took on a different tone. And so, I wrote it, first time author wrote it. And I had a friend of mine who used to work for me. He's not an official writer. I guess we're writers now. I guess we're authors now, but he helped me write it. I ran into him after many years, and I had lost a bunch of weight from the arsenic poisoning. That's what concerned me, and that's why I went to get it evaluated. I used to go 250, 255 pounds, and I started losing weight very quickly, 30 to 35 pounds in less than 6 weeks, and then 40, 45, 50. And then I started having physical symptoms of difficulty swallowing, tingling in my fingers and toes, intestinal issues. And that's what prompted the visits to the physicians to figure out what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
And I was tested for leukemia, early onset Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. They couldn't find anything. And it was ultimately, I put my health on the back burner once we separated and we got into the middle of the legal mess. I had to focus on keeping my job and my sanity.
Yeah.
So I did that and put the health on the back burner. And then ultimately it was a liver specialist. I told him everything that was going on. He said, we need to do a hair and nail test. And so it was through a hair and nail test that they confirmed that I had been chronically exposed.
Wow.
But I will say again, just from the author's perspective, because I know this is about authors and their journey, it was a double-edged sword to write it. It was very cathartic, to put it all down on paper. But at the same time, I had to open a lot of the boxes that I had already packed away. And what led to the book, to be honest with you, Dave, was I started journaling when I was still in the marriage.
Yeah.
Now, after my psychiatric lockup, 9 days in 2 different psych facilities with a police escort in between.
Wow.
When I got out, obviously my head was scrambled and all I was just trying to figure out what is going on. I would say it was a very good experience for me, believe it or not, because I spent 9 days with folks with, significant mental health issues. And I'm like, okay, whatever they think you've got going on, I don't have bipolar, and I don't have bipolar. It was a complete misdiagnosis. It's the U.S. healthcare system at its finest. And it's also the U.S. healthcare system not only failed me, but failed her. She was able to bounce around from doctor to doctor and was able to find a psychiatrist to ultimately continue to write her pills. She would write her whatever she wanted. She was addicted. I discovered she was addicted to 3 different formulations of amphetamines, mood stabilizers, benzodiazepines, you name it. I knew the medication she was on for her alleged autoimmune disease. And I'll close the loop on that, is she didn't have an autoimmune disease. When we subpoenaed all of her medical records, and they were massive, thousands of pages of medical records, because she had health issues over the years, turns out it was all in her head. She went to a prominent clinic down in Florida twice that I supported, because I'm like, I want to figure out what's going on with you. You've been down this long journey of discovering what's causing all your health issues. Well, it was the darn medication she was taking.
Yeah,
all of her cardiac issues and all of her bowel issues and everything that she was experiencing was self-inflicted. And so, which blows my mind that she was able to somehow keep all this tucked away for 17 years. And I think that I talk about it in the book. I think the trigger was her father's death. She had to make the decision, because that's the other complex part of the story, is her father came out of the closet when she was 2 and accepted his homosexuality. She had been estranged from her father for 10 years, reconnected with her father. He died 5 years into their reconciliation. She had to make the decision to take him off life support. I think that's what pushed her over the edge. And the timing lines up perfectly when she started abusing prescription medications. But the healthcare system here, again, failed us both. I mean, it's abysmal. And, I don't envision it getting better anytime soon. But when you can bounce from doctor to doctor and hospital to hospital and self-report what you have, and they don't question you at all. Because that's the thing at the trial, is that, she was claiming that she's too sick to ever work again. Her health issues, and she's been through so much and all that. But they did not bring a medical expert to the stand at all that confirms she even has it. To the contrary, my attorney did a great job with cross-examination and digging into the medical records to show that this prominent clinic said she does not have an autoimmune disease. And if she has one, it is a very, very minor form of one. So she doesn't have a significant illness. But anyhow.
Yeah.
So that's the story in a nutshell, and it's all packed into the book. It took me about a year to write, again, with assistance from a good friend of mine. I'd write a couple of chapters and then send it over to him. And it was an interesting journey. I'm sure you're familiar with Grammarly, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I started using Grammarly because as I'm reading it, as you write it, for me, the way I approached it, and I've had a handful of folks reach out to me and say, how do I even get started writing a book? Right. And I listened to what Ivanka had to say yesterday, and she's absolutely right. You can't edit a blank piece of paper, right? But I look at it like pottery. Just put it on paper. Don't worry about grammar or flow or repetitiveness or whatever. And that's where I started. And I don't think I finished this part of the story, but I had a heck of a foundation. So by the time I started to write the book, I was doing journaling and writing a diary for documentation purposes. My 2 brothers, they're my heroes. My brother and his wife are my heroes. They saved my life without question. He's like, whatever you want to do. I stayed in the marriage after getting out of the psychiatric facility for another 6-7 months, inexplicably, but I did. I was trying to figure out what was going on, trying to get my mind right. But he said, if you're going to stay in a marriage, you need to start documenting this stuff to protect yourself. You've had the cops called on you. You've been misdiagnosed with bipolar 2. You need to start protecting yourself. So it was very detailed diary and journal, but it was also helpful for me to put my anger down on paper. I mean, it was so much craziness that would happen from one day to the next. You get a little positive momentum and then a negative downturn. So this is where, again, I leaned back on some of these relationships. And they were casual friends, but I leaned back on the stories they shared with me. And it kept me grounded to say, okay, you don't have it so bad. Remember, you don't have it so bad.
It's interesting. Because I've had female authors on to talk about gaslighting. Yeah. And from their perspective, like, I didn't even know what gaslighting was, to be quite honest. I didn't realize how deep it goes and how it starts. None of that, right? But to have, that's why I'm so glad your book is out, because it's in a totally different perspective. So going back, do you have a moment in time where you could see the gaslighting start and how it built and how that all played out?
Yeah. And I didn't learn about gaslighting until my domestic violence trial. I had to hire a separate attorney. And in the States, I mean, I had like 4 days to find a new attorney because my attorney that I had on retention, she's like, I don't handle domestic violence cases. You're going to need to, she gave me some names and helped me with that. But I had like 4 days to lay out an entire story for this guy so that he could accurately defend me, at a trial. But we're at the domestic violence trial. And she's on the stand just saying whatever accusation came to her mind about me, she would throw it out there. She didn't care. And he leaned over, he grabbed the mic, covered the mic. He said, she's gaslighting you. And I said, what is that? He said,
Wow.
he said, look it up. So once I discovered it, and I did a lot of reading. My therapist recommended a lot of different books for me to read just to keep my mind right, and for me to prepare for the divorce ahead, to say, like, she's like, you need to know who you're dealing with. So they believe she has borderline personality disorder on top of probably some other things, on top of completely frying her brain chemistry with amphetamines and benzodiazepines and so forth, so on. But yeah, as I look back on it, the subtle accusations of infidelity and the subtle accusations of drug addiction that she started on me, and I would dismiss them as, you're a little bit delusional, you're paranoid.
Yeah.
And being in the medical field, I had access to rheumatologists and neurologists that I could consult privately and go, here's some of the things I'm seeing with my wife. Could this be caused by her autoimmune disease? And they're like, oh, yeah. Yeah, there's plenty of research out there of autoimmune diseases attacking every organ system in the body, including, the mind and the brain. And yeah. And so there were a couple of other medical emergencies that she went through, which I won't get into that. It's all in the book, but she had some other things that happened in her brain that, again, I looked at all of those and go, this is what's causing her paranoia, her mood swings, her delusions. But yeah, I'm very, very clear on when the gaslighting happened. But and as they also call it, breadcrumbing, right? They pull you back in emotionally so they can abuse you more. She would tell me she loved me and wants to work on things, and we would go to, she'd give me a false sense of hope. And then 8 days later, she's accusing me of doing something, when in fact, she was the one out there doing it all. And that's why I think the title of the book couldn't be more appropriate.
Yeah.
The third gift. Had she never accused me of giving her herpes, and I never prayed so hard my entire life, because I thought, wow, she had infected me. Because we were together. Probably we were together, and she was very strategic when we were together. We hadn't been together in 4 months, and she decided she wanted to be intimate 3 nights in a row. And once she made that accusation, I'm like, oh, I was very concerned, but I'm also, wow, the depths of her evil, that she was convinced she had infected me and she was going to put all this on me. Had she never made that accusation, though, I don't know where I'd be today emotionally. I don't know where my relationship with my kids would be, because it's like, well, Dad spent 9 days in a psych facility and he's got herpes, she's got herpes. Who gave it to who? I have no idea. But it's the gift, because it's a gift of freedom, emotional freedom and peace. So that's how I came up with the title. Yeah.
How do you parent through all of this? I don't understand how you have the ability mentally, physically, emotionally to be a parent and show up for your kids through all of this. How do you do that?
And you do. I mean, and they kept me going. And that's why the title is appropriate, The Third Gift. They kept me going. I was pushed to the edge of darkness. I was pushed. I was not suicidal when I was in the psych facility. A few years later, I certainly would be, as you get disappointment on top of disappointment on top of disappointment, and so forth, so on. But my focus was my kids, because I knew that Mom's off the reservation.
Yeah.
Mom's going to be all about Mom. Mom and Grandma turned their back on the kids, and I'm like, they need me. I need to keep my stuff together. And I was blessed with a tremendous therapist who said, they go as you go. If they see moments of weakness, or they see anger, or they see whatever, they will pick up on that. So they will go as you go. You need to however you find it, continue to find strength. And it was through my faith, and my faith got stronger, and I made God more of a priority as I spent more time in church. Whenever the internal shakes would manifest themselves, that's how my anxiety and stress plays out. I just start trembling. There were several occasions when my brother on the phone up in PA would say, I can hear you shaking. I can feel you shaking through the phone.
Mm.
So what kept me going was my daughter was in high school at the time. My son was in college, and they both endured their entire college and high school years dealing with this. I took the high road, I didn't bash their mother. I had to stay on the high road, even when I got the truth of, having a negative test result. Because what did mom do? Mom went and told them before my negative test results were revealed that she has positive proof that your father's cheated on me.
Wow.
He gave me herpes. So she used the kids as weapons at every turn that she possibly could. Fortunately, my son was out of the house at college. He was not right in her snare, but my daughter was 15, 16 at the time and very vulnerable. And that's how I lost her for a couple of years, but they were my focus. And once my daughter came back into my life, I made it about repairing that relationship with her. And I made it really about us trying to have as much normalcy as we could. And I shielded them from all of the stuff that was going on in the courts. My daughter had come back into my life at the time that we were going through the alimony trial, but I shielded her from it. And I did not start writing the book until I had my kids' consent. I said, I want to write a book. I think it'll help others. I've been strongly encouraged to do it. And I had their support to do so. And once they read it, they're like, Dad, you kept so much from us. And I said, I had to. I wasn't going to drag you down into the mess, and you needed to focus as much as you could on your own lives and your high school career and your college career. And I couldn't be more grateful how they've turned out. They're now 25 and almost 29, and they're gainfully employed. And my daughter will be getting married next May, and I couldn't be more proud of the choices that they've made, in spite of the options that they could have gone off the rails for sure.
So people are going to come to this episode. They're going to see the title. There's going to be something about gaslighting in this. And that's where they think they might be in their relationship. And they're listening to this going, I can feel, or I'm getting some kind of indication that this might be happening within my relationship. If I got out of the way for a moment, JD, what would you say to that person who is in this and they're not really sure if it's really happening? They feel confused, disoriented. Maybe it's all in their head, right? What would you say to them?
I would say, and this again, I referenced it earlier, Dave, I made a mistake of isolating myself initially, but I would say to them, find an objective voice, someone you can trust, whether it's family, friend, therapist. If you can find free therapy, if you got the resources to do it, I would highly recommend therapy. Religious counsel, anybody, go to somebody and tell them what you're dealing with. You need an objective voice.
Yeah.
And I didn't do that. I had a whole network of friends. I had a network of professional friends that I trusted, and I had a huge family that I could have gone to and said, hey, this is what she's accusing me of. I mean, the first question from my brothers would have been, well, did you cheat on her? Are you doing drugs? But I didn't take it. I isolated myself, and I allowed her to shred me, to tear me apart. And then her mother got involved, and that's why her mother's in the subtitle, and her mother. Had I gone to my brothers after her mother threatened to kill me on a beach trip, which is on the back cover of the book.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
She accused me of, perhaps you're addicted to porn, perhaps you're addicted to drugs. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it was something in your childhood, but if you put your hands on my daughter, I will kill you. Just like out of the blue.
Nice.
But had I gone to my brothers, they would have been like, what the hell, man? What's going on? I didn't. And it was just 2 or 3 short months later that I'm in a mental institution, involuntarily committed, because of the thought of losing my family and separation and all that hollowed me out.
Wow.
Hollowed me out. But to be direct, and I apologize, but I would tell them to find an objective voice. You're not losing your mind. You're not going crazy. Find an objective voice that you can have a conversation with. But it's very subtle when they do it, and it's very effective. But you get to once I got out of and that's why the psychiatric facility was a blessing, because once I got out, I started looking at her accusations in a different way. I would do it with a smile on my face, and I would go, okay, here comes her paranoia and her delusions again, which are all fueled by her prescription medications that I had no knowledge of. But I had a different stance on it. Prior to that, I internalized it all like, well, okay, maybe it was me. Her two big hooks were, we never had trust in our marriage, and you're a pathological liar. And I'm like, give me some examples of how I've been a pathological liar. And I talk about that in the book. I've struggled for years with cigarettes. So I would hide cigarettes from her and the kids when I was quitting. So I'm very transparent in the book, but she turned that into just a leash that she tried to hang me with. And if that wasn't good enough, she's like, you know what, maybe I'll put some arsenic in his protein powder. That's where I believe she was putting it. But again, I would say, do not isolate yourself. Find a friend, find somebody you can trust to have a conversation with. I probably would have looked at things differently. The other thing I will say to your listeners, and I wish folks would have done this. So after this all started going down, and after we ultimately separated and then divorced, people would be like, yeah, we noticed some things were off with her. We noticed her pill eyes. We noticed her slurred speech and this and that. And I'm like, but you didn't say anything. So my message would be, if you have a friend that you love or you care about, if you see something that's concerning in their relationship, say something.
Yeah, speak
Absolutely
up.
say something.
Right.
Yeah, speak up. And I did that early on years ago, when I had a good friend of mine, grade school friend, that came to me and wanted me to be the best man at his wedding. And I said, no. I didn't say it that directly, but I'm like, I don't support you guys getting married. And sure enough, 6 months later, they were divorced.
Yeah. See.
Anyhow, you see something, say something. Don't wait.
Right.
And it's people say, well, I don't want to get involved in their relationship, but you're doing them a disrespect if you don't.
Yeah.
So
it's amazing. So JD, where do people go to connect with you and follow the story of the book and your journey? Where do we go from here?
So I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, TikTok. So TikTok was the one that really kind of launched the book, to be honest with you.
Oh, really? Good.
Yeah. Yeah. And so at The Third Gift on all those platforms, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. That's where they can get it. And I tell you what the mission and vision was with it, and what keeps, it's been out for about 2 or 3 years. I've been promoting it, and again, thank you for the opportunity to share it on the podcast today. I'm supporting a couple of nonprofits with the proceeds. I have not paid myself a dime. I'm supporting multiple nonprofits, a women's center. A good friend of mine, his son was decorated military, took his own life at the age of 26 stateside. So he's got a endowment fund for him at Appalachian State, North Carolina, scholarship for ROTC. So I'm looking to take an awful situation and do some good and be able to give back to others. So
amazing.
That's where the proceeds are going to. Yeah.
Amazing. Any other doors open up with having the book for you?
It's interesting. I was fortunate last October to talk at the U.S. Marine Corps base in Barstow, California.
Wow.
So I was able to share my story. They invited me out. It was a year ahead of time. They planned it out for a year to speak there at their Domestic Violence Prevention and Awareness Conference. So you want to talk about butterflies when you've got 80 to 100 Marines, the majority of them are male, dressed in their camouflage. And I'm like, oof, all right, I got to share my story and I got to be vulnerable in front of these guys. However, I spent a lot of time with 3 Marines afterwards. They came up to me and said, look, are you going to be on base for a while? And I said, I'll stick around. And the stories they shared with me, with what they've endured, and it was further encouragement for me to go, okay, keep going with this.
Mm-hmm.
Keep going with this. And so I think other doors have opened with respect to additional speaking engagements down the road, hopefully. And again, part of sharing the story is really sharing the faith. I mean, I got through faith, family, and friends is really how I got through. And folks have told me too, they're like, and I don't know where you're at with respect to your faith, but they're like, it's his story told through you. I think Mark mentioned this why he wrote his book, but it's his story told through you, and you need to. It's an opportunity for you to provide testimony around your faith and what faith did for you, because clearly God intervened through greed or whatever vehicle he used. Because again, if she had not played that card, I would not have looked at her medical claims. I would not have looked at her pharmacy claims, and I don't know where I'd be again emotionally or from a peace perspective today. So it's been an interesting journey, but I will say, as we talked briefly, it was a ton of work. I have thousands and thousands of hours, rewrites. Once I did the rewrites, I'm running it through Grammarly and I'm picking some stuff up. And then obviously I ultimately was fortunate enough to get a publisher to pick it up, and had a fantastic editor. And it's just been very eye-opening to look at the process, not only the writing process, but now the publishing process and the distribution process,
right?
And what Amazon does and how they take, the majority of it.
Exactly.
And any of the platforms. So it is available it's available as an ebook, paperback, hardcover, audiobook.
Good.
The audiobook I narrated from my closet in my home.
Oh, I am so getting that audiobook. I love audiobook. So, wow.
Yeah, and I had a guy out of Texas that helped me. The publisher hooked me up with this guy, a guy by the name of Martin Baird. He was fantastic. So I would just send him the files from my iPhone. He's like, had me tape off my floor and the stand. My girlfriend, made me a big old book that I could read page by page. That was an enjoyable experience too, to record an audiobook. So I would say, if you have any of your authors out there that don't have an audiobook, it's an ever expanding platform, and it was interesting to do. So I narrated that and launched that. So I've got every platform out there now. I just launched the paperback. So it's available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Walmart, Target, any of your online retailers.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. GD, thank you so much for making time to
Absolutely,
go through
Dave,
this.
Thank you.
The story is amazing. And I know that there's going to be people listening who maybe, if it's not them personally, it's somebody they know and they've been afraid to say something or step up and speak up. Right. And that's an encouragement for all of us to be really connected with our friends and family and to watch and be that support, just like your brothers were and your family. That's amazing how they came and helped you. That was good. Yeah.
And they took the high road. They could have really come at her and her family like they came at me, but they didn't. They stayed on the high road, and adversity reveals character, either lack of it or tremendous strength.
Right.
And I'm very proud of my family. I've got 5 brothers and 3 sisters and a bunch of adult nieces and nephews. They could have stormed that village and took her out, but they didn't. So, but this has been an absolutely wonderful opportunity. I've enjoyed the episodes. I want to dive into more of your episodes from this podcast. So I've enjoyed the insight from the other authors. It's been an interesting journey, very educational. I'm glad I did it. Folks are wanting me to write another one. I don't know if I have another one in me, but you never know. Yeah. Well, keep sharing your story. Keep going on podcasts, because you never know who's going to hear this, who's going to hear the story, who it's going to connect with. Somebody listening with earbuds in when nobody knows what they're listening to is picking up information that could help and could save their life. So that's amazing that you're willing to go out and share this message, because we need it. We need it. So thank you for doing that. I'm happy to do it, and I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity. And I want to also say, to all those that have already supported the book, whatever platform you've decided to dive into, I'm beyond grateful, because there's millions of books out there. I will say to any of your folks that have written a book, stay out of bookstores. It'll buckle your knees. Yeah. I walk into bookstores and I go, oh my God, there's millions of choices. How am I going to do this? So I stay out of bookstores. Yeah. And the one unique thing about your book is the author and your story. No one else has your story. No one else can duplicate it. So that's what's unique about you in a sea of other books. Yeah. Your story stands alone. So I love that. Well, thank you, sir. I've absolutely enjoyed this. Amazing. Okay, everyone, check out all the show notes. All the information will be there as well. When you buy the book as a gift or for yourself, please leave a review as well wherever you buy it, to let other people know how important this book is to you as a reader
and let's share the message. JD, thank you so much for being part of the podcast.
Thank you, Dave.
Awesome. Thanks for being part of the podcast again. Appreciate you investing time in the show and you for listening this far. Thank you. One thing to keep in mind is we are looking for help and some support for the podcast. If you are able to help support our show, our little podcast show here, we can go over to livingthenextchapter.com and all the instructions will be there to help support the show. It takes about $30 to $40 a month to do this, just for the hosting and all of that other stuff that we pay for. But if the show is giving you any value and you're enjoying what's happening here, would love any kind of support that you can offer. That would be great. And you being here and sharing the show helps us grow. Helps us get great new authors on the show, connect with other listeners, and build community. So whatever you can do to share this show today, I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here for Living the Next Chapter, and I can't wait to share the next one with you. Talk soon. Have a great day.